Okay, well, to start off, our American society is based off the fact that everyone has specific human rights that can't be taken from them. That is what makes gun control such an interesting topic, is that we don't really know whether we have the right to bear arms or not. What I personally find most interesting about gun control and gun rights is that people from both sides quote the same thing, which is the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution reads, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." And the reason why this is so trippy is that people who are for gun rights say that it specifically says that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and that is enough solely that they should be allowed to keep their guns. And the people that do not want them to have their guns and want stricter gun laws quote the beginning, which is "a well-regulated militia." And if that's the case, then there's no need for a well-regulated militia anymore. Okay, so, based on survey data from the U.S. Department of Justice, about 8% of all assaults, robberies, sexual assaults, rapes, and murders committed during 2008 were committed by offenders visibly armed with a gun. And while 8% isn't that much, that adds up to about 436,000 people. So if we could prevent 436,000 people from having to go through all that stuff, then the argument for that would be that it's definitely worth it to ban guns. A survey in 1993 of 4,977 households found that over the last 5 years, 0.5% of households had members who had used a gun for defense in an aggressive situation where someone almost certainly would have died if they had not used a gun for protection. If we apply that 0.5% to the U.S. population, that amounts to 162,000 incidents per year. 15 of the 25 worst mass shootings in the last 50 years took place in the United States. Since 1982, there have been at least 62 mass murders carried out with firearms across the country. And also, of the 11 deadliest shootings in the U.S., 5 have happened since 2007. And that just leads to the fact that this is still an ongoing problem and that it might be getting worse. A national survey of police chiefs and sheriffs in 2005 showed that 66% of police chiefs believe that citizens carrying concealed firearms reduce rates of violent crimes. And if the people protecting us think that it helps if we're able to protect ourselves, then why would there be a problem? A survey of male felons in 11 state prisons done in 1982 found that 34% had been scared off, shot at, wounded, or captured by an armed victim, and 40% had decided not to commit a crime because they thought that the victim was carrying a gun. And that's a lot of people to be scared off or to not commit a crime, because if civilians carrying guns can scare off 40% of criminals, that's a whole lot of crime that wouldn't happen. England and Wales instituted strict gun laws in 1997, which basically eliminated private gun ownership. And the trends recorded from England and Wales shows that violent crime has skyrocketed since that time. It's basically tripled from around 700 people per 100,000 to over 2,000 people per 100,000. And that's a very sharp increase. Paragraph 2316, quote, "The production and the sale of arms affect the common good of nations and of the international community. Hence, public authorities have the right and duty to regulate them. The short-term pursuit of private or collective interests cannot legitimate undertakings that promote violence and conflict among nations and compromise the international judicial order." Also, in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraphs 2263 to 2265 say as follows, quote, Love toward oneself remains a fundamental principle of morality. Therefore, it is legitimate to insist on respect for one's own right to life. Someone who defends his life is not guilty of murder, even if he is forced to deal his aggressor a lethal blow. If a man in self-defense uses more than necessary violence, it will be unlawful, whereas if he repels force with moderation, his defense will be lawful. Nor is it necessary for salvation that a man omit the act of moderate self-defense to avoid killing the other man. The legitimate defense of persons and societies is not an exception to the prohibition against the murder of the innocent that constitutes intentional killing. The act of self-defense can have a double effect: the preservation of one's own life and the killing of the aggressor. The one is intended and the other is not. So as you can see, there are kind of two conflicting ideas in the Catechism.